What is up, everybody? We're back again for another one. We've got Michael Gardiner, who is the founder and CEO of DFY Meetings, a leading agency for Outbound. They manage over 2,000 different mailboxes across their entire infrastructure, and also the founder and CEO of B2B Outbound, which is a cold emailing course built for beginners, agency owners, and people trying to get into and accelerate their revenue generation using Outbound. Michael, how are you going?
I'm doing great, V. Very excited to be here and talk to you.
Absolutely. So for those who know, Michael and I actually just had a conversation a few weeks ago, but I was answering the questions, and now I want to pick his brain because I think he knows a lot of cool stuff. So Michael, first question I ask everyone is, why do people pay you?
For appointments, ultimately. So people for my agency, B2B companies come to us because they either don't want to manage their in-house cold email system, or they just need additional help, and they come to us to ultimately schedule more appointments.
Okay, cool. And now I think a cool question that we get asked, because our audience is basically people who are starting an agency or already crushing it right now. So let's maybe answer the question for both. If I'm starting off completely fresh, I don't have the testimonials, I don't have whatever, what would be your way to guide me to start that agency, get my first customer?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it comes down to choosing the right service and offer. What I see a lot of beginners do unintentionally is they take a course, find a YouTube video, and they copy a business model that every other beginner is copying. And what they don't realize is it may be easy to know the next steps because someone tells you exactly what they are, but because that information is available to everybody else, you're putting yourself in this red ocean that's so difficult. So I see a lot of people give up and fail, not because they're doing the wrong things, but they're doing the right things that everybody else is doing at the same time.
Makes sense. And if I were to flip that question and say, as someone who's an established agency, because right now, one of the things you do really well is effectively how you manage your agency. So maybe if you could walk us through how you currently manage 2,000 mailboxes, what's your process behind some automations you can share that can help expedite, business infrastructure?
Yeah, absolutely. So from more of a CEO perspective, less technical, one of the biggest changes in this company compared to past agencies I've run was hiring like proper A players. I used to have a lot of different agencies I ran pretty successfully, but there was always a revenue cap because it was myself, maybe one team member, and a lot of virtual assistants. I love virtual assistants, but the biggest difference between my company doing okay / kind of good to really good was like proper salaried A players and multiple proper salaried A players. And underneath that, even our virtual assistants are like full-time and dedicated to us. So in terms of this overall operations, having people that are just focused on what you're doing and having people that can create their own documentation, their own SOPs, and do troubleshooting where it doesn't all come to you. So actually having that proper company structure. So from a high level view, that's been a big impact. Now, on a more technical level, we have a COO named Felipe. Maybe some people listening have heard of him, who's an absolute legend when it comes to everything tech. So, our tech stack, you want me to dive into tech stack? Or?
Yeah, go for it. That's going to be one of my questions.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to run a really high volume cold email operation, one of the things I would say on tech stack that we do differently is we use a diversified tech stack. So This idea that we don't want to rely on anything too much. So for example, domains, we're buying domains from Pork Bun, GoDaddy, Google, email, Outlook, Zoho, Google, even like our verifier tools, Use Bouncer, and email finder. So we're using different tools for everything. Because if you want to build a business and one tool has an outage or something happens, companies are small. What if someone who's leading it dies? You just don't want to have all of your eggs in one basket. So that's another thing that we've set up, which has been really beneficial.
Okay. And I want to sort of run into that premise of tech stack. Maybe walk us through your current tech stack. What are the top 3 tools in your cold emailing tech stack? Actually go with 5 because you're obviously an agency. You do a lot of cool things. So let's go with 5.
Yeah. So for sending, we are equally split between SmartLead and Instantly. So obviously SmartLead, awesome tool. Instantly, also awesome tool. We're literally 50-50. So those are our sending tools that we love them both. Another really cool tool, which most people know, is automation tool, Zapier. But I'll also add, if you want to go even farther down to automation rabbit hole, Zapier, the next step down the rabbit hole is Make, and the next step is Parabola. And we use all of those and love all of them. So sending tools, those are for automation tools, and trying to think of another tool that is something a bit different, maybe people haven't heard of. Instant Data Scraper is one of our favorite ones.
Yes.
It allows you to scrape
Yes.
data from a whole bunch of websites and create
Yes.
really unique prospect lists.
Yes. Okay. Fair enough. And that makes perfect sense. And in that note of how you said you got Felipe and yourself working through an engine that you're trying to build, right? A well-oiled system because you need A game players. Maybe if you can walk me through how you pretty much work out your sales process. How do you optimize your sales process? How do you create a system that goes ahead and consistently works off feedback, and then that leads to more quicker, faster, better, and easier deals?
Yeah, sure. So our sales process starts with getting appointments, obviously. So when we're first getting appointments, it's an equal split between personal brand and also between outbound. And the way I look at it is personal brand is going to be the easiest sales, but you can't choose who comes through your personal brand. You can guide your content and try to choose, but the beauty about outbound, whether that's cold email, Instagram DMs, whatever, is you can only reach out to your perfect client. So our sales come from both of those channels. But from there, we make a determination of how we can best help somebody. So for established B2B businesses, we have our agency where we manage campaigns. But one of the issues we faced there was, well, we had a bunch of calls of great people who just weren't ready to pay someone to manage their outbound. Their offer is not proven, their sales process not proven. So we also set up a course more geared towards beginners. So that was the first step of our sales process. It's understanding people come from and then having an offer that suits them. And we have 2 offers. From there, a lot of our sales process, especially of cold email, it's a very logical process. Ultimately, we don't want to take on someone for our agency if it's not a good fit. And we have a bunch of red flags where we don't think we can help someone. I'm sure you've seen this. You can have the best copy for an offer no one wants, and it won't do anything. Our sales process is not emotional. Look at the things we can give you. We don't have any guarantees, no promises, but we will look at your campaign. We'll compare it to other data we have, and we'll give you an honest opinion if we do or do not think it will work. So it's not crazy in terms of like sales tactics. It's pretty boring actually. And then from there we have, proposals. We do have optimizations, but I think if you over optimize your sales process to close every deal, especially in an outbound agency, it's just going to lead to terrible retention, terrible feedback, and ultimately be a business that's going to be not fun to run.
Not fun. Yep. I completely understand. Okay, that's fair. That makes a lot of sense to me. Okay, and I sort of want to jump into when you speak about optimization, sales cycle strategy management, and we've definitely spoken about copywriting that cannot save you up, the best copy if you've not got a good offer. Maybe if you can walk me through absolute don'ts that you see, because through your course, right? What are some absolute don'ts people should not do when they're creating copy in their cold emails?
Yeah. So copywriting. So are we factoring an offer or just pure copy here?
Whichever one. Like, let's just say some people, emails being too long, links being added. What are some absolute no-nos on your perspective?
Sure. So some of the common traps, if I had to do like the 3 common traps beginners get into, the first one's going to be offer related, just sending the same offer that everybody else sends. A good example is Facebook ads for e-commerce businesses or lead gen for realtors. These are good services that people need, but you're one of 10,000. And if you don't have any reason to choose you, then no one probably will. So offers to be number 1 thing. The number 2 thing is probably the most, I would say, difficult for a lot of people, which is the tech. Cold email can be really technical, especially at a certain scale. And if you're not somebody who has some nerdy background of IT and, maybe like for me, it was tinkering with video games and whatnot. I got good at computers. It's really difficult to figure out, okay, well, I'm on this blacklist. What does that mean? Or I'm having this issue. What does that mean? So tech's a big part of it. And I would say the third thing, which is more directly copy related, is going to be just I, me, my, our. Talking too much about yourself, the prospect does not care.
Yep. I train my team saying, if your copy has I, me, us, we, swip it. Just get rid of it, and you'll automatically start speaking in your customer's beneficial, terminology, and that'll just have such a massive switch. So, game on over there for you. Now, you've spoken about blacklisting and the technical aspect of it. Do you mind walking me through? And look, I know there's no straightforward structure that works. Every business is their own, etc. But have you seen some sort of patterns across Smart Lead or Instantly in terms of in configuration that are just this works, right? Like sending 10 emails a day works absolutely well, 50 warm-ups, whatever. Do you have some sort of like a cookie cutter process, if not something similar?
Sure. So I can give a few insights that
Sure.
are outside of a warm up your emails
Sure. Yeah.
I think people listening know, but a few insights that may be helpful that are less known. One, we do a lot of our own testing. So since we have so
Yes.
many clients, we get to do
Yes.
a lot of really cool tests and get
Yes.
data that isn't easily available on YouTube or
Yes.
anywhere else.
Yes.
One thing we found, which was really interesting, is how important the name of your domain is. We only use .coms, and we also found that adding a dash in a domain name will just damn it to never work forever. And what we found on this is Google, Outlook, Zoho, domain inboxes, they're looking for people who are phishing, and that dash can get you registered as someone who's phishing the primary company name. We've actually seen a huge difference in this. So in our domains, only .com, no dash, and also no using numbers instead of letters, like a 0 instead of a O, because that gets you registered as phishing. So that's one thing we found for deliverability. I don't know if you've seen that before, but it's kind of an interesting
The
one.
dash thing, yes.
Yeah.
The
so
dash is
on
something,
domains, that's one. In terms of copy, not using spam words. Mail Meteor, you can look it up. They have a great spam word checker. We have either one or no spam words in all of our sequences. And also syntax. So for people who don't know what syntax is, it's adding variation, but it's not testing your copy, but it's just adding variation to your emails. Like, hey V, hope you're having a good day. V, are you having a good day?
Good day.
Hi V, hope your day is going well.
Yep.
It's different. We add an obsessive amount of syntax to our campaigns. I mean, every single sentence in every single email almost is syntax. So you have thousands of variations because ultimately inboxes are looking to pick up patterns, right? Normally using emails, they don't send the same email over and over again. So syntax is huge on deliverability.
Yes. I could not agree more. I've just spoken to someone else about this. Google's gone from the usual technical way of breaking down whether your email lands in spam or not, and they've now taken a more NLP copywriting approach. And the more variation and variability you have in your copy, the easier it is for you to actually avoid that spam cycle. And we've also seen this thing, and maybe you can attest to it. Do you see patterns where sometimes where you have, maybe it doesn't apply to you because you aggressively use syntax, but do you ever see situations where like your deliverability, which is maybe let's jump into that. Do you use open rate tracking? Do you use reply rate tracking? How do you manage your deliverability if you don't use open rates? Can you give us some advice on how you do that?
So we don't track open rate, and I'm sure you know, but open rate tracking is just giving insights to email providers that you're doing something you shouldn't. So we look at reply rate. When I say reply rate, I'm not talking about positive reply rate. We could have a reply rate of 5% and everybody's telling us to go away. That's fine. Obviously, that's not ideal for the campaign, but we look at deliverability in terms of reply rate. We know we should have between 3 to 12%. We also know just from our own campaigns, some industries have higher than others. So reply rate, we're checking for blacklists every single week. That's another thing. So those are the main two indicators we have if something's going wrong. We also just see like less bookings come in too, which means something's going on.
Okay. And if you get caught on a blacklist, what's your general approach? Do you sort of dump the domain? Do you request to get it delisted? What's your approach here?
Sure. So just for everybody listening, blacklists are privately owned companies and their job is to keep you safe with email and identify spammers. Sometimes us cold emailers get identified into the spammer category. So when we're registered on a blacklist, there are hundreds of them, so privately owned companies. And it depends on the blacklist. Some of the most common ones, I'll give an example, are Spam, Spam House, Abuse.ro. When we're on any of those three, it's completely scrap the domain, give up and start over. It's not worth it because trying to get off without paying is hard and unpredictable compared to the cost. And paying doesn't make sense because you get to set up new domains and emails.
Correct.
So there's also some other ones like Sorbs, for example, where we have found it has no impact to anything.
Yes. It was a common myth back in the day that if you're on Sorbs, you're screwed, but it's Spam House and Spam Cop. It's like, okay, thank you, move on. Okay, that's fair. Now I want to sort of run into understanding landlords. We've figured out that this is how you write copy, this is how you stay out of blacklist, so this is how you recover yourself from a blacklist, and so on and so forth. Now, if I were to go ahead and speak about 2023 and where AI is in 2023, do you currently use AI for anything? Do you personalize using AI? Can you sort of jump into what you're doing, if you're doing anything over there?
So we have done a bit with AI, but we've also found it to be really cool, but not always consistent. We've used it a lot in terms of, wow, this is awesome, but building it into processes, it's also brought up issues. So the one way we're consistently using it, because we have a lot of ways we're playing with it, but the one way we're consistently using it and it consistently works is using syntax with ChatGPT-4.
Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. All right. That's fair. And but do you do anything at scale? Do you use any sort of personalization at scale? Let's put AI part aside. Do you do any personalization at scale? Absolutely not. Or what do you do to drive relevance to your copy? How do you stand out?
Sure. So we build all of our campaigns in segments. So what I mean by that is, let's say we have somebody who's selling TikTok ads as a service, and they have 3 different markets: software, info product, and e-commerce. We're going to choose one of those industries and then break down a subcategory and write a script just to that subcategory. So we would never write one script selling TikTok ads to everybody.
Sure.
And then one step down, not even to e-commerce, we would get as specific as, okay, this script is for fashion companies. And then fashion companies, owners have different pain points for small companies than large company marketing managers do. So we're building our segments based around a specific subsection of an industry, and also the titles we're reaching out to. Not for every single title, but mainly owner title versus marketing title or whatever employee title. And then we're writing to that one specific group. So it won't be personal to every person,
Yes, but
but
to
the pain
persona.
points and goals will be very similar to the persona.
Absolutely. Yeah. You've bashed it based upon that instead. Makes perfect sense. And that sort of draws me to another topic I like speaking about a lot, which is around relevance, validation. So how do you validate your mails right now? Do you use a certain tool that you're happy with? Can you give us an advice structure on whether you message catch-alls? Do you not message catch-alls? What's your approach here?
Sure. So I'm going to answer this the best I can, because one of the beauties of having a COO who's a tech guy is I'm not always top of date.
Yeah.
So a couple notes I can confidently talk on. We validate all of our emails around 48 hours before we launch a campaign. So the way I've explained to some people is that leads expire like milk. A lot of people think they're being proactive when they build their lead list for the next 3 months, but the goal is to avoid bouncing. And over the course of a week or 2 weeks, people quit, people change titles, emails go bad, people pass away, a whole bunch of things happen that can make an email bounce. So a lot of people like to do this, like, let me get leads for 6 months and be proactive, and they don't realize they're actually hurting themselves. So we like to verify our emails right before a campaign launches. In terms of how we're verifying them, we're using Never Bounce, and we're also using, I think it's Use Bouncer and Scrubby. And we're only emailing people who are like 100% verified. Sure. We do have some other tools we use to take the ones that aren't red or green, but the yellow, to kind of in the middle where we're not sure. I forget the term. We have another tool we use that can verify some of those. But for the average person, I think that like Never Bounce or Use Bouncer or Scrubby alone is a good tool.
Makes sense. That makes sense. All right. I want to ask one last question. This has been absolutely fantastic in terms of how technical you have got into this and you've patted it down, which is great. I want to sort of understand your general, like you have discovered a lead list that you want to send a message to for a client of yours, right? What's your process? Just start to end. You said you validate them. When do you write the copy? How do you personalize the copy? What metrics do you look for in terms of measurement of the campaign being successful?
Sure. So at the start of the campaign, we're very big around campaign ideas. So I would say equally as important to our copy is the segment. So it starts with, we onboard a client, we're understanding who we're targeting, we build out a segment. So, once we have that segment, I like to pretend I'm that person. And sometimes that involves doing research. Like a great place is like Quora. What questions are they asking? What pain points are they expressing? So we build our segment, and then we try to understand what somebody in that segment feels. For example, like, user-generated content. That's a popular service for advertising. But the pain point people see on a surface level is you need more content. The pain point a layer down is UGC that actually sells. And a pain point down is UGC that sells and has a shelf life above 2 weeks. So we try to get a few layers deep on the pain points. In terms of actually writing the copy, our copywriting isn't anything spectacular. It's more about good offer, really unique segment, high relevance, talking about them. Occasionally we write emails that are really creative on the copywriting side, but those are just kind of left field tests. They're not our norm. And then once we launch campaigns, obviously we give a few days to collect data, and we base things off on the success rate outside of tech is going to be the booked meeting rate. So, it varies industry to industry, but people always want a ballpark. Yeah. Our ballpark is 1 out of 100 is great. 1 out of 200 is good. 1 out of 300 is average. 1 out of 400 is mediocre. 1 out of 500 or worse is bad.
Yeah.
But that also depends on industries.
Yeah.
If you're reaching out to CEOs of big companies, 1 out of 1,000 is awesome. So it just depends.
Yeah. Fair enough. Wow. Mate, you've given me a lot to think about. I'm going to go use this data on my own metrics as well. For someone who wants to get in touch with you, your course, use you as someone to sort of bring in more leads for them, where do they get in touch with you?
Sure. So the best free research would be my YouTube channel. It's just Michael Gardiner Entrepreneur. If you search on YouTube, you'll find me. If you have an established B2B business and want your campaigns run, dfymeetings.com. Or if you're just getting started and need some help getting just set up in the basics, b2boutbound.io. Happy to help, and I'll see you there.
Easy. Awesome. Thanks, Michael. This is fantastic. Have a great day, man. Cheers.
You too. Thanks.